This is update for July 10, 2022, day 137 of the war, end of the date update. So today, as a heads up, is going to be mostly general strategic discussion, and it's going to be relatively short, as everything is quiet on the Western Front. So essentially, the whole situation kind of came to screeching halt. Even Russian attacks at this point, just small size probing attempts and more attempts to kind of paint the picture that they're still attacking. So what happened recently, and we just mentioned this several times before, for about 8 to 10 days, Ukrainian command is attacking in concentrated effort all Russian ammunition depots, fuel depots, gatherings of their heavy equipment, some potentially command posts, and so far this tactic has been quite successful in terms of actually inflicting actual damage. So it created literally shock from the pain on the Russian side, and also shock in terms of inability to quickly adjust to the situation by the Russian army. And this is done essentially everything by just those HIMARS multiple rocket launchers. The huge advantage of the precision makes actually a difference relative to the old Soviet system that rely on saturation of their territory as opposed to hitting actual target. So essentially all of these launchers, they hit targets, and so a lot of the ammunition depots have been, more than 10 of them, and large ones, have been destroyed here in the rear of the Russian army. Some of it also in this on the Kherson bridgehead. So it's actually unclear at this point if the Russian army has been logistically paralyzed, or they're still doing regrouping, or the two things happening at the same time. But the fact is, and this is actually from the Russian sources, there is extreme level of pain coming from these attacks, to the point that some of their sort of thinkers on the Russian side, they propose to hit Ukraine or hit sort of command centers in Kyiv with tactical nuclear strikes. So as you can imagine, this is not being discussed because things are sort of normal and great. This is being sort of contemplated because there is extreme level of pain, and essentially what this potentially means that Ukrainian army has found a strategic answer to Russian artillery and broke Russian machine that's being sort of slowly but surely moving forward. As discussed before, we were somewhat skeptical on this. Remains to be seen if this is durable solution, or effectively Ukrainian army can maintain this level of attacks to sort of keep effectively Russian forces at bay by destroying their ammunition and fuel and some of the heavy equipment, and also some of their sort of command posts as well. And then we mentioned yesterday that the potential strategic answer by Russian command is actually decentralize and sort of disperse ammunition depots and basically fuel the same. This is essentially what Ukrainian army has been doing, right? Because before, Ukrainian army was under similar attacks, right, by Russian rocket strikes in terms of logistics, and it was able to overcome that problem by essentially decentralizing, making sort of dispersing the deliveries, making them smaller batches, making them smaller, using smaller sort of tracks to do that. Basically, you can find work around it, and that's what we saw that Russian command will eventually do. Except it seems that the surprise, shock, and pain is for now has paralyzed them. And then we sort of heard some opinion from sort of call it other people who just said that, okay, in order to do that, the Russian army needs to stop being sort of Soviet army, right? To decentralize, because the whole point of the Soviet army that everything is super centralized, and the commanders at lower level and individual soldiers are super disempowered, right? They're just a cog in a big machine, and they disposable cog. To a great extent, Ukrainian army is exactly the same. We mentioned this before. They both Soviet armies. Nevertheless, the Soviet army was able to figure out how to adjust logistics under Russian rocket strikes. So it remains to be seen. We'll see how this whole situation plays out. One thing for sure right now, that there is a severe level of pain on the Russian side, and it's unclear whether they paralyzed by that pain to the point that they're not able to maintain any attacks at all, or this is just also bigger regrouping is going on. So we'll find out once in probably a week or so where it's all going in this way. On related topic, Ukrainian Minister of Defense gave interview to The Times newspaper, where he actually announced plan for large offensive to liberate Kherson region and then Zaporizhia region, essentially south of Ukraine. He didn't mention anything about Crimea, potentially Crimea as well. And for that, So let's just let me finish what he sort of said, and then I'll share some thoughts on this. So first of all, he announces this offensive. He is saying that Ukraine is raising 1 million army for this offensive, and this is being directed by the president. So he came up with essentially what he basically said, that Ukrainian president came up with this idea that this is where the sort of attack or offensive should be, and then the Ukrainian general staff and head of general staff will just execute per his will, essentially. So that's what was presented, and it kind of tells us that there are many sort of problems within Ukraine, actually. So first of all is that basically decision where to attack is driven by political reasons, and really it's more driven by the economic reasons, and those economic reasons are essentially driven by the few call it oligarchs that sort of in Ukrainian power that influence a lot of economic decisions in the country, and we would be very sort of upfront. They are essentially cancer on society, and part of the reason why Ukraine becomes so defenseless in the first place, so that Russia felt like it's going to be easy to attack Ukraine. So again, this whole offensive seems to us is being organized to sort of defend interest of those few people, as opposed to actually really attacking where it's needed, where the most chances for success are from military perspective, as opposed to giving basically the right to choose the right place to Ukrainian general staff. So again, this is shows their sort of the problem. So that's the first part of the problem, but there are more problems there in this whole sort of article and just generally what's going on. The second problem is then again the discussion of like some kind of 1 million 1 million strong army and all of that. It really tells us that there is no plan, no desire to actually learn how to fight by quality, not the quantity. And we mentioned this many times. This is essentially war of attrition. And if Ukraine fights this war by throwing around quantity, it's never will win. There's no chance to win, simply because Russia is about 3.5 times larger population-wise, and resources-wise, it's probably 10 times larger than Ukraine. So the only way for Ukraine is to learn how to be more efficient and better, right? And then we can see then leadership, that's again problem in the leadership, that they don't want to learn that, and maybe they just personally incapable of learning how to do that. So again, that's sort of another problem with all this, and it also implies very heavy reliance on a supply of heavy weapons from the West, which may or may not happen in enough quantities. So what this really means, in order to launch that attack, if your army is not sort of prepared, is not skilled in this means also extremely heavy level of casualties in the attack, right? So not to mention that when you're doing this article in a newspaper and you kind of announcing to your enemy where you're gonna attack, that already creates you diminishing your chances for success, right? So that's that's another problem with all of this. So basically, this is kind of like an example of how not to do things, basically, and how not to wage the war, basically. And then there was another Ukrainian official. She came out and she called on Ukrainian citizens on occupied territories, again in the south, in Kherson region and Zaporizhia region, to leave as soon as possible that area, so that Ukrainian army has open-handed in terms of attacking at will any targets, and essentially not constrained by the presence of the civilian population. Again, it's the same. Maybe this is the right call in general. That this should have been done long time ago. That all populations should have been removed from their areas of the fight. And that's how actually was happening during World War II, for example, to our knowledge. So this is probably right sort of move, right call. At the same time, you don't do that. At the same time with this article announcing that we're going to attack in the south. So anyways, this is a kind of good example of the problems in Ukrainian leadership and sort of its limitation, to put it very mildly. That's sort of like we finished with sort of Ukrainian kind of leadership and political situation. Then let's switch to economic situation, and then in that area there is Italian newspaper called Corriere della Sera, and it wrote articles that Germany is basically blocking financial aid to Ukraine, actually loans, non-interest bearing loans to Ukrainian government in the size of $9 billion US, and this is probably some kind of, in our understanding, some kind of war behind the scene that's going on between Ukrainian government and the German government, because Ukrainian government was pressuring Canada not to return the pump that was used in Nord Stream 1, just to make sure we make it clear, Nord Stream 1, not Nord Stream 2. So right now Nord Stream 1 is not working, and because of that, natural gas prices hit one of the highest levels, about like 1700 or 1800 per thousand cubic meters, or I think actually it's measured in kilowatts, but essentially that's the same meaning. So that obviously created immense economic problems and pressures in Germany. That pump did not work, and it was under repair in Canada, and Canada was kind of slow in returning that pump under the pressure from Ukraine, and then finally Germany sort of kind of pushed for that pump, and Canada sort of caved in. But I guess there is sort of this tit for tat behind the scenes going on between the two countries, unfortunately. Then in other news, Russian head of Foreign Intelligence Service, that's another branch of yes, it's not really KGB. It's a separate standalone competing agency, but that's sort of call it equivalent of KGB. His name is Naryshkin. So he openly said on the international scene that West is waging hybrid war against Russia. This has been used. This is not sort of surprise for like internally in Russia. This always being discussed. This war is essentially proxy war against the U.S. and Europe. So this, internally Russian citizens all know the reasons for this war. But this is actually first time when it was openly put in terms of international affairs that Russia is clearly stating that this is essentially war between Russia and the West. So hopefully, and I would assume that most of the viewers by now are realizing that this is not some kind of regional war. This is a much bigger war, and hopefully doesn't escalate to true World War III. So now let's actually switch to the front line. Let's kind of quickly go through it. There is, as discussed, not many changes. So first of all, there is, and we're going to start in a clockwise fashion from the very north. So along the state border, exchange of artillery fire continues. Also, Russia reports that Ukrainian commander groups go to the Russian territory and blow up railroads in Bryansk region. And Bryansk region is very, I'd say, is perfect area to do that because there are a lot of forests, so it's naturally sort of area suitable for command operations. And during World War II, there was a lot of partisan action that were destroying German railroad lines in that area. So this is essentially kind of repeat on the same sort of theme. So now let's move to Kharkiv. Let's see what's going on there. Situation here is completely completely dead. Just exchange of artillery fire, exchange of rocket strikes, but there is not even sort of action on the ground. So everything is becoming sort of, positional, and as we said, it's quiet on their western, and this is eastern front. Now let's move to south. Let's move to Izyum bridgehead. Situation here is that Russian troops attacked very in small numbers, just a probing reconnaissance attack again towards this Krasnopila and the Lina villages. It was very clear even to Ukrainian command that this was not anything major. This is more like a kind of try to put pressure, kind of try to create impression that Russian troops are still attacking. But it's very clear that this is also becoming this area becoming quiet and dead essentially. Now let's move to the Lysychansk area, or North Donbass section of the front line. Things here actually very surprisingly for the first day more or less quiet and dead essentially. There were no major attacks, some probing action, some skirmishes, but nothing similar to what has been going on before. And that's why we're saying that potentially this strikes into the Russian rear by HIMARS, multiple rocket launching systems, essentially paralyzed Russian troops in this area, probably created severe shortages of their artillery ammunition. Also, probably some command posts got hit, probably shortages of fuel, and so this creates a very difficult situation for the Russian command and Russian troops in this area at this point. At the same time, there was obviously regrouping as a parallel action that was going on here. Now let's move south towards Bakhmut area. Things here as well quiet in that. So No major action, nothing really to report, with exception of some artillery fire, mostly from Ukrainian side. So now let's move more south to west of Donetsk. Things here also very similar, with exception of some small-scale probing attack near Avdiyivka, our typical area. But again, it was small-scale probing. It was not a major action, basically, here. Now let's quickly jump to Zaporizhia front line. Here everything is also quiet. No really, no any kind of action, even small-scale skirmishes here. Now let's move to Kherson bridgehead. Things are again stable, unchanged here as well. Really sort of small-scale action, but nothing really major. Thanks for watching. That's it for today, and until tomorrow. Bye-bye.